Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just around 11:10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Saturday, coming to you this morning with the latest on Tropical Storm Ophelia, which made landfall just after 6 a.m. this morning along the coast of North Carolina as a strong tropical storm. The center is now moving just very close to Greenville, North Carolina, as the systems move quickly inland, moving north at about 13 miles per hour. Maximum sustained winds right now are about 50 miles per hour, but you see there's a large swath of heavy rainfall, and we'll talk a little bit about the winds and the coastal flooding, storm surge that are extending well to the north of the center. So widespread impacts occurring with Ophelia today. On Saturday, you can see the bands of moderate to heavy rainfall affecting much of eastern North Carolina. The I-95 corridor extending back towards Raleigh, the I-85 corridor with heavy rainfall and bands moving up through portions of southeastern Virginia and up into portions of central Virginia as well. If we zoom out a little bit here, we'll see that there are some heavy rain bands that are moving in farther north up into the Washington, D.C. metro area and into the mid-Atlantic states across portions of the Delmarva Peninsula, coastal into New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, even up into New York and southern New England. So again, expansive impacts ongoing this morning from Ophelia as it moves inland. And we are expecting Ophelia to continue moving northward, moving with the center crossing into Virginia later today and this evening. And then the system the low center itself will turn northeastward and move out over the Chesapeake Bay and across the Delmarva Peninsula and out into the western Atlantic as we go through Saturday and into Sunday. But again, a reminder that a lot of the impacts are occurring well in advance of the center. You can see the expanse of tropical storm force winds here in orange. We're seeing, wind gusts over 50 miles an hour all the way to the north up in Lewis, Delaware this morning. There's a frontal boundary that extends out to the east and northeast of Ophelia that's driving some strong winds and coastal flooding and enhancing some of that heavy rainfall well to the north of the center. So we still have tropical storm warnings in effect from Cape Lookout, North Carolina, along the remainder of the Outer Banks, up along much of the Virginia coastline, portions of the eastern shore up to south of Fenwick Island, Delaware, much of the Chesapeake Bay and the lower tidal Potomac. Again, we have tropical storm warnings in effect in all these blue areas here that you see, covering much of eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, the lower parts of the Delmarva Peninsula, and even portions of the northern neck of Virginia and southern Maryland. But we also have wind advisories in effect for the Washington, D.C. metro area all the way over into coastal New Jersey, where we can also expect to see wind gusts of 45 to 50 miles per hour, more associated with the frontal band to the north of Ophelia than directly the core of the center itself. On the storm surge front, we still have a storm surge warning in effect, meaning there's the potential for life-threatening inundation from rising water over normally dry ground of at least 3 feet above ground level. And all these areas in purple, the western side of the Pamlico and Albemarle Sound, still portions of the Outer Banks, all up into portions of the Chesapeake Bay, especially on the west side, the James River, the portions of the lower tidal Potomac, where we can see significant inundation here as we go into the next high tide cycle. Right now, we're seeing some of the highest water levels up on the Pamlico River in places like Little Washington. And as we go through this afternoon's high tide cycle, we'll see some substantial inundation along portions of the Chesapeake Bay, Hampton Roads. Anywhere here in yellow, essentially, you could see 2 to 4 feet of inundation. And also the potential for coastal flooding of a little less in terms of magnitude, but still 1 to 3 feet of inundation in places like the upper Chesapeake Bay, so areas like Annapolis, Delaware Bay, portions of the Jersey Shore, even up into portions of the Potomac River as far inland as Washington, D.C. I do want to show you real quickly the water level gauge along the Pamlico River at Little Washington. You can see has risen quickly this morning, almost up into the major flood stage. So we are seeing some inundation there. It looks to be 2 to 3, maybe 4 feet above ground level based on some of the images we're seeing this morning. So if you're in one of those flood prone areas, please be careful. Please stay out. Don't drive into areas where water covers the road, either from freshwater flooding or storm surge. You can easily be swept away, and you don't exactly know how deep that water is as you put your vehicle into it. On the rainfall front, we are expecting heavy rainfall amounts of 3 to 5 inches across portions of central and eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, isolated totals as high as 8 inches. So that's places like Rocky Mount, North Carolina, up to Petersburg, Richmond, pretty much right along the I-95 corridors where we're expecting to see some of the heaviest rainfall. That rainfall is going to extend with 2 to 4 inch totals across much of the rest of the eastern mid-Atlantic region, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, much of New Jersey, even into southern New York and New England. So this is going to be a widespread heavy rainfall continuing through the day today and even into tomorrow. And in terms of the potential for flash flooding, we could see some considerable flash flooding impacts, especially in this area right along I-95 from Richmond down through Petersburg, places like Emporia, Rocky Mount, down to Kinston, North Carolina, where we can see those very heavy rain bands associated just to the west of the center of Ophelia as it moves northward today. But a broader flash flood threat extends farther north across the D.C. metro area, all of the eastern shore, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and even into New York and Long Island, and portions of southern New England as we go through Saturday, and with a bit more of a focus on the impact, potential for flash flooding, at least scattered flash flooding up into Philly and New York on Sunday. We could see some isolated tornadoes here across portions of southeastern Virginia, northeastern North Carolina, the Delmarva Peninsula today. At least an isolated tornado or two are possible. One thing I do want to touch on is generator safety. We're seeing at least some scattered power outages in portions of eastern North Carolina, portions of Virginia. So a reminder that if you're going to try to use a portable generator, be sure and use it safely. We lose a lot of people after tropical storm events due to carbon monoxide poisoning from improper generator use. So you never want to use your generator inside your house, a garage, or any other enclosed space that's occupied by people or animals. Place your generator far enough away from your house so that the carbon monoxide won't get into your home through any kind of intake vents. And just please, if you feel sick, dizzy, or weak while using a generator, please go get fresh air and get outside immediately and try to get medical attention. So one other thing I want to touch on before we wrap up Ophelia is we have a new tropical depression that's formed out over the eastern tropical Atlantic. You can see here in the satellite imagery, this is Tropical Depression 17. Maximum sustained winds with this system are about 35 miles per hour. And you can see from the track forecast, we expect the system to move slowly westward and then turn northwestward and northward as we go through the next week, with the system becoming a tropical storm, but turning northward well to the east of the Lesser Antilles and the northern Leeward Islands. So we'll keep an eye on this system as we go through the week, but it's a reminder that we're still right in the peak of the hurricane season. Likely going to be more systems forming as we go along, so you want to stay tuned and be aware as we go through the rest of the season. So just to wrap up things on Ophelia, this is going to be our last live stream from the Hurricane Center on Ophelia, but just a reminder of some key points here. We're going to have widespread tropical storm conditions across much of eastern North Carolina up into the mid-Atlantic states today and into tonight. The potential for significant storm surge inundation, especially right now along portions of the Pamlico River, western portions of the Pamlico Sound in North Carolina, extending up into the Chesapeake Bay region with the high tide cycles later today. The potential for some considerable flash flooding impacts, especially across portions of eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, but also that risk extends up into the mid-Atlantic states as well. So that's going to wrap it up from here from the National Hurricane Center with this live stream. For more information, you can always come back to the Hurricane Center webpage at hurricanes.gov. Find your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. So please stay safe through the remainder of Ophelia. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center.